I'm Jess King. What's up?
Okay, Dennis Rodman, settle down. Welcome back to Hypothetically. I'm Lily Caffrey-Levine.
I'm Jess King. What's up?
And today we are going to be breaking down the women's softball season and what it could have been like had it not been cut short.
Well, I gotta tell you, this was kind of really hard for me to research more or less and kind of hypothesize about, because when you think about a softball season, it's like 53 games. Like, that's a lot. So we're talking about lacrosse last week. Like, we could really get a grip on where they were going right before they entered conference play. This team had a handful of non-conference games left before a boatload of conference games. Like, they had the whole world ahead of them in this season. So hopefully we can do them justice by talking about what we thought was going to happen to them. So Lily, before last year, before they lost to Monmouth in the MAC championship game, they had a record of 35-22. How do you think this team is going to be fueled by that championship loss, and how would they have taken that and moved ahead going into the season had they been given the chance to?
Yeah, I think something like that, like getting so close and almost tasting it before the final game, it is something that definitely propels them forward to see the things that they need to work on and really focus on those things. I think one of those things and kind of the gaps that they need to close is in run support. To start, their pitching is they have a really phenomenal pitching staff. They have Callista Phippen, Megan Haff, Kylie Myers, and Nicole Teague. They're a really young set of pitchers. They have a combined ERA of 2.51. They also have a combined .428 walk to strikeout percentage. Megan Haff struck out 13 batters in 7 innings against UNC Wilmington, and Callista Phippen struck out 14 batters in 7 innings against Robert Morris the second time they played them. They only allowed 9 runs one time in this season. It was their first game against Robert Morris. However, that game also had 3 fielding errors in it. However, on the other end, on the offensive end, they've scored at least 9 runs in 3 different games. So I think while their pitching staff is really great, some things they need to improve on are just a little bit more precision in the fielding and then some more run support. I think they lost some of that run support when players like Casey Page and Brandy Kuhn graduated. However, Caroline Bharata, who's a big statistical leader for them, has always kind of been there with that offensive talent. And I think while she's stepping up more and more each season, I think someone like Claire Oberdorf has also been contributing a lot on the offensive end. She had a .493 on-base percentage, she had 6 walks, and she was hit by a pitch 7 times, unfortunately. But that all shows that she can really get on base. It's just a matter of getting those RBIs to get her home. So while I think that there was no big category that they were lacking in, I think that there just were little improvements here and there that they needed to make. They were so close to getting there last season, and so I think knowing how close they were, knowing what they needed to work on, and finding more of that precision, hammering down that run support is definitely something that can get them all the way there. So I think that they would definitely had the opportunity to make a really far run in the MAC tournament, and then I think focusing in on those little things could definitely get them to win that final game of the MAC tournament.
So in order for this team to get to the NCAA tournament, they really have to dominate in the MAC, obviously. And so with that, I think with all the points that you just addressed, Lily, they had a lot of tools in their toolbox to get to a good record. My prediction for their record probably would have been 15-5, pretty similar to what they did last year, and hope that they can build off momentum from their non-conference schedule to propel them to the MAC championship. They have a couple of games in their schedule in between the non-conference mix that I think would be crucial to winning to boost their confidence going into closer dates to the MAC championship, like games against Lafayette and Hartford, I think would be key games that they have to win in order to do better in the postseason.
I think I'm going to go a little bit on the opposite end of you and say that I think that they could have finished the MAC at 18 and their MAC play at 18-2. As long as they can get a grasp on those things, like a little bit more run support, they do have a great pitching staff. They do have a lot of really strong fielders, and they have people that are really strong in the hitting department as well. It's just a matter of kind of nailing all those things down to come together. And I think they're very self-aware. I think they know that and they see what they need to do to improve. And I think because of that, it can really help them improve upon their record and then hopefully get that MAC tournament win. So Jess, you mentioned a 15-5 conference record. Who do you think are going to be some big contributors that would have helped to that had the season gone through?
Well, there are a couple players that you briefly mentioned in your overall synopsis of this season, hypothetical season, that we would have seen. I think one player that we should highlight is Kalista Pippen. I'd really like to see her build on what she did last year. So going back to her 2019 season, she was a freshman pitcher, and she led the team with 1.48 ERA, along with a leading category in other things such as wins, appearances, game starts, and she had 6 complete game shutouts. Not to mention, she's also nationally ranked in the top 50 in several categories, which is fairly impressive for our program. I mean, this softball program is great overall, but she really is doing great here. She's ranked in ERA number 25 in all of the NCAA. Her strikeout to walk ratio has her ranked at 30. Strikeouts per 7 innings, she's ranked 36. Her total strikeouts is ranked 46. And hits allowed per 7 innings is number 48. So she's on the board and putting Marist again on the map. And you know that I love the players that can put us on the map for our small Hudson Valley campus.
Yeah, I mean, you addressed it right at the start with Kalista Pippen. Their pitching staff is so strong. I also think, although I think there were some precision things they needed to work on, they have a really strong fielders as well.
So one fielder for the Red Foxes that I think is important to talk about that you briefly mentioned is Caroline Bharata. She's a shortstop for this team. And talk briefly about her 2019 season. She was a sophomore. She was one of 2 Red Foxes that started all 57 games, which is pretty impressive for this team. She was ranked first team All-MAC, and she was a member of the MAC All-Academic team. She hit .324, collecting 92 total bases and 13 RBIs. And a couple of her other stats include that she led the team in at-bats with 207 at-bats, 42 runs, 67 hits, 15 doubles, and 2 triples. Now, she took that and worked on her game, obviously, a little bit more, and her 2020 junior year was off to another hot start, similar to Pippen. So she started all 19 games again as a shortstop. She was second on the team in batting average with .347. She had 12 RBIs and 32 total bases in only a short amount of time. I mean, they did play 19 games, but still they had so much more ahead of them. So you can only imagine that with a greater sample size, her stats would have skyrocketed, I think. She had a .365 on base percentage and a .444 slugging percentage. And she led the team defensively with 82 fielding chances and 42 assists. So not only was she great for them offensively and getting on base and hopefully sending runs in, she was great on the other end defensively.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Caroline Bharata is a really interesting player to watch. She's super talented. On another note, she's a junior, but let's talk about some of the seniors. Let's get into our Ken Mink Award.
So I gotta just say, this Ken Mink Award, this episode, is pretty special for us to talk about, and I think for the softball team. They kind of have their own little Ken Mink in Poughkeepsie, drinking from the elixir of life. She's not necessarily my pick for the Ken Mink, but Lily can talk about how we all are trying to get in on the action of the elixir of college sports.
Yeah, so my pick, it's not a real pick because I don't know how realistic this would be for a player like Claire, but Claire Oberdorf has had a really, really interesting career. Coach Asunio said, he was quoted in Marist Athletics saying, "Claire is probably the greatest all-around female athlete who has ever attended Marist College." And I think that is a very fair analysis to give of Claire and her athletic career here. She didn't play softball until after she had started playing basketball at Marist. She was a walk-on on the basketball team, and she had a pretty decent basketball career as well as a phenomenal softball career. She chose to focus a little bit more on softball later on in the time that she was playing for Marist, but it's really interesting. She played, I think we figured out about, 7 seasons. She was injured for a softball season. She got injured in the last game of the basketball season. So I think it's just she has a really interesting career. Claire has racked up some pretty impressive stats, both softball and basketball over the years. But I think the thing about an athlete like Claire Oberdorf to me is just the way she's been able to keep up with it through the years, playing both basketball and softball. It is not easy to play one sport, and the fact that she's been playing two this whole time, I think is very impressive. So who is your pick for the Ken Mink Award?
So my choice for the Ken Mink Award goes to Jade Sinsel. She's the catcher for the Red Foxes this season. Now, her career was kind of interesting because this season she did play in 18 games and she made 13 starts. She hit .257 with 2 RBIs, 1 run scored, and 1 sacrifice bunt. So it was interesting. She played in 25 games also in 2019. So she wasn't a huge outlier for the Red Foxes in terms of their offense or defense. And even in their starting lineup, there were a couple players competing for time as a catcher. And it was talked about that she would even be put at first base somewhere. So I kind of was very interested looking ahead at this season before even coronavirus happened. I was interested to see where she would kind of end up, like in their lineup and in their field placement. So I feel like for her, it would be interesting to take that second year and say that, look, I'm not going to end on this note of uncertainty for me while I was just coming up in the ranks on this team. Like, I'm going to prove myself, and if it's worth it for her to come back for another season next year, I think that'd be great, because I think she was just getting off to a hot start here.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good reasoning as to why someone would take an extra year that isn't often super talked about. But I think this team, they had a lot of great things ahead of them. Unfortunately, as we know, the season got cut short. This is one that I think would have been really cool to see. I think they would have been able to be really successful in the MAC and then in the MAC tournament, and hopefully maybe even an NCAA tournament.
Yeah, this program has seen a lot of success in the last couple of years in the 2000s of getting into the NCAA tournament and kind of making a stance there, going a little bit past the first round and whatnot. But it could have been in the cards for them this year. You really don't know.
Yeah, well, there's a lot, though. We don't know. Well, thank you for watching this episode of Hypothetically. I am Lily Caffrey-Levine.
I'm Jess King.
And we will see you next time.